What's good, y'all? It is Thursday, January 1st. My name is Patrick, and you are listening to The Morning Show. Happy New Year to ya. Happy New Year's to ya. Happy New Year to ya. Happy New Year's to ya. Yeah. Is it New Year or New Year's? I think years, when there's something following it, like New Year's Day, because I know recently my phone just auto-corrected the years to an apostrophe S. So I think that's probably how it works. So it's probably New Year. So Happy New Year to ya. Happy New Year to ya. Wherever you might be listening, wherever you might be tuning in from, whoever you might be, wishing you a Happy New Year. That's right. It is 2026. We have made it out of the raging dumpster fire that was 2025. I had a lot of good things happen in 2025. I also had bad things happen in 2025. I had neutral things happen in 2025. One of the things that I'm learning about what it means to exist as a human being is that lots of stuff happens. And the sooner we're able to make space for all of the stuff, and by make space, I mean just acknowledge and allow for that to exist and to happen and not to feel shame, guilt, or regret about it, but also not to dwell in it, but to be reflective on those things, and to hopefully internalize the lessons that I learn upon reflection and make better choices down the line. That's what I mean when I say making space for the all of it. Another thing I've been thinking about too this past week has been what I want to do more of in 2026, and that is ask for help. I want to be better about asking for help, and not just in the ask or not just asking, but when I'm asking, being able to explain what it is that I need help with and why, and also when. The reporter's questions. I am a person who, if I am not, or I'm struggling with a problem or trying to figure out something, solve it, build it, I don't know, do whatever. And again, I'm struggling. It's causing me consternation. I will generally do I got this. I can handle it. It's fine. And try and work on it and figure it out on my own. And while I think that is a good thing, in many cases, I also think that it can be very detrimental when you say that you can handle the thing, but in reality, you don't have any idea what you're doing, and you cannot handle the thing. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't learn maybe how to do a thing, like take a picture or color grade a video or shoot the video or whatever the case might be. I'm being very specific right now. Doesn't mean you can't learn the skill. Instead, it just means like you don't need to feel like that embarrassment, that shame, that guilt that naturally comes up when we run into an obstacle or barrier that we can't overcome. I think that those things are just natural. However, what I'm trying to do for me more of in 2026 is when I run into those walls and I can't create my own door or I can't break the wall down, I want to ask for help. I want to be better about asking for help and explaining it, and being able to explain what it is that I need help with. I've been talking a lot in therapy recently about how I think I've come a long way in terms of what I think other people think of me, like their opinions or perspectives or whatever. And I think I've gotten to a point where I really don't that none of that really bothers me or impacts me too much. And I feel really good about that because I think for a long time that was what was influencing the way I move throughout the world. And so I think that's been a big point of progress for me. And I don't know that still when I run into these barriers, these walls, these obstacles that I need help with, that I've been able to ask for help because I'm still there's still residual embarrassment, shame, guilt about not knowing how to do a thing and needing to have to ask for help. And people aren't mind readers. They're not going to just come and help you if you don't ask. Or it's going to be, again, like I said, infinitely harder for them to help you if I don't know how to explain what it is that I need help with. Yeah, so there's that. That's what I'm thinking about, as we kick off 26. Anyways, today is part 3 of my conversation with Tina Ahlgren, friend, IPS parent, IPS educator, and the appointed parent advocate to the ILEA, Indianapolis Local Education Alliance Committee, that this past year worked on recommendations on how to create a more collaborative, cohesive, communicative system amongst IPS, Indianapolis Public Schools, charter schools, innovation schools, and the like. Today we are going to be so we kicked this off on Tuesday, and you heard Tina and I talk about the timeline for how the ILEA was formed, the really crunched and truncated and rushed timeline, 6 months that they had to figure out what it was that they were going to recommend, and then the recommendations themselves. Yesterday, we talked about the recommendations a little bit further, and Tina talked about why she was the sole no vote. So the recommendations were approved 8-1 to go to the Statehouse, and Tina was that sole one no vote. And she also talked about the people specifically that made it really easy for her to be that lone no vote. And now today, we're going to be talking about the messaging around Indianapolis Public Schools, around charter and innovation schools, that kind of got us from point A to where we are now. And we're going to talk about how that messaging impacted and how that messaging impacted the path that we currently find ourselves walking down when it comes to these ILEA recommendations, especially being so heavily pro-charter or charter-focused. So I will tarry no further. Here is part 3 of my conversation with Tina Ahlgren. So it makes sense to me that everything would lead into that direction. What doesn't make sense to me, again, is kind of this like truncated timeline that you have to make these decisions on. And like you said, you alluded to, like, it's not even a list of recommendations. It's just almost like a set of bullet points, and then we will work through that.
Yeah, and again, I would definitely blame the timeline on that. I had hoped we would get to more detail in that time, and I think we could have gotten a little deeper.
Sure.
Definitely in some places, but there was also hesitation, I think, to if we disagreed, it kind of sometimes became we'll just leave that to the next group, right?
Sure.
Because we don't, our recommendations don't have to be that detailed. And I just, as I said in my statement, I just don't trust the legislature to fill those details
Sure.
in, right?
So I'm gonna ask this, and this is kind of a hindsight. Will definitely be more hindsight, but like, would it have made more sense, even if we were only going to be operating for 6 months, to just talk about governance for the 6 months?
Well, it's interesting because again, like in theory, the main focus is
Was
transportation and
Oh, right.
facilities, right?
Well, okay, yeah. So it sounded like, especially when you're talking about like we're coming to talk about these things, but like you said, like it all goes back to
Yeah, it
here.
all
Who makes the
comes
decision in the first place?
exactly.
So, okay, so I'm trying to think of how I want to ask this next question. So, one of the things that I have heard through the grapevine, and this is, I guess, maybe a misconception that could be cleared up, because I
Mhm.
think I mentioned this on Friday, was that there was early on with the ILEA forming to like really try to make sure that like the public part of the public school portion of this had a big focus in terms of like how the committee got put together. I heard that at a certain point in time, someone from the Mine Trust came with recommendations of who should be on this committee, and then that was just kind of approved and ran with sight unseen.
So as far as like how the appointments would be
How the
made,
appointments for ILEA specifically, because I also feel like that affects all of the rest of this.
so there was definitely a lot of back and forth on the legislature about
Yeah.
who should appoint what and how. And unfortunately, like I was so caught up with other bills that I didn't
Right.
follow it as much. But I know at one point there was even like state level appointments to it in the bill.
Okay.
So I mean, as far as like, coming out of the legislature, this is how this makeup with 5 appointed, well,
Yeah.
the mayor or his representative and 4 other appointments plus Superintendent Johnson and 3 other appointments from IPS was, at least since the bill was passed, that's how it's been.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
I couldn't say but
Totally.
I know that even like the IPS board had weighed in at one point,
Yeah.
trying to make sure that, if this was going to exist, making sure that it was local appointments and things like that.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. But I couldn't say exactly who advocated for what because I was worried about property tax.
For sure. Yeah. And like you said, we didn't even talk about this back in March or whenever you came on. And yeah. Okay. So I asked that because okay, wait. Here, how am I going to frame this question? So like I said, we've been having this. You and I have had this conversation since earlier this year. Clearly, this has been going on for a longer time. I read that a lot of the things that we're seeing in the last couple years, last year and now this year especially, were actually like recommended back in 2011.
Yes.
So we mentioned the Mine Trust. I'm linked to them. I think I linked to them on Friday, but I'll link to them. You can learn more about them and what they do. But essentially what they do is lobby for the charter school model here in Indiana. And in 2011, they published a report that included a lot of the recommendations we're seeing, including property tax dollars and centralized enrollment systems and governance. So the reason I asked this, and the reason I asked about like how the ILEA got formed in the first place, was because one of the things Michael and I talked about was the messaging coming from folks like the Mine Trust. On its face, doesn't necessarily sound bad. Like, we want education access for Black and brown kids, for low-income families. But like when I talk to Wildstyle about some of this stuff, the data doesn't really back up the messaging. I'm wondering if you could kind of, from your perspective, dive into like what are they saying? What are they actually not saying? And what are we as citizens, as people watching this, what are we either understanding or misunderstanding or being misled on in terms of what this is? Because you are centrally intertwined in this, and this wasn't even something that you could put on your radar because of so many other things that were happening.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about that, I think about me, who
is a lot more disconnected from the education battle currently happening, and thinking about all the different messages and stuff that's coming out and how that's influencing and impacting the way that people think about decisions that might be made from a committee like this. It was a really long question, and there's a lot of answers to go in a lot of directions, but
Yeah, we could have packed that forever.
I'm interested in like the messaging aspect of it, because I think that's really, because like I said, 2011, they were already starting to seed this.
I actually keep that report at my desk. I have a hard copy, and I refer back to it every once in a while.
Okay.
When I'm just trying to think about like, what are the priorities here?
Sure.
Like what is their vision from the beginning? Again, some of it coming really truly from a place of wanting to do better, but there's also some vested interests there, right?
Sure.
So I would say my number one frustration with the messaging is that it's presented like it's easy or simple, like or that the data is clear cut, right? So
Okay.
I think Ronak said when we were on here in the spring, the data's a mess.
Sure.
There's been so many changes in not only like the type of test, the makeup of each school, there's just been you can't control for any variables, right? So everything is so messed up there. And then even when we dig down into like the results, there end up not really being anything to brag about, right?
Sure.
As far as something being slightly different. So the data is much less clear than it's made out to be. I don't think any of us should be particularly excited or proud about how the data flushes out.
Yeah.
We all have a lot of work to do. And that's why when I say like there's no child getting everything they need, right?
Right.
Everybody's hurting from where we are, right? This isn't just to like turning everything into a charter is this magic wand to make things better, right? And then the other piece that I think the other place where messaging really frustrates me is with the financial piece. We talk about the funding gap, and it's so much less clear than it's made out to be.
Yeah.
Now again, IPS has historically received the property taxes that the charter schools have not, but there are other funding streams that they have access to that traditional schools don't. And there's also just so many complexities to the types of property tax money, the uses of that money. It's not as simple as, this magic number that there is between each child. And the funding, again, is just so complex. And so, and I would say all sides like cherry pick what numbers
Totally.
that they use. And so it's hard even as someone who is completely involved. And I even sit like on the finance committee, right?
Yeah.
For IPS. It's so hard to like really nail down what are these numbers? What are these impacts? What does the data really say? And so one of the things in the plan that I actually am really excited about is the idea of a common accountability measure for all the schools, like created by this community
Sure.
to represent what our community values. I think there could be a lot of, depending on what's in it, I could see a lot of value in even just being able to learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
To be able to see who really is doing well at X, Y, and Z. Because like my school's struggling there. Like
Sure.
I want to know. And right now you're kind of reliant on the state data, which is usually not very detailed.
Sure.
Or you're reliant on word of mouth, right? So I hope that those accountability metrics actually go really, really detailed into things like parent engagement.
Sure.
Like I think I said in my statement, I really want to know who's engaging Hispanic families well, right? Or our other multilingual families, because particularly with everything going on at the national level, that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And I know my school's working hard to do that, but man, if there's somebody who's doing it better, I want to know.
Totally.
So we can figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's difficult because I know there's the Mind Trust and the other groups. They're also just really good at messaging, and part of that is financially. They
Sure.
have a huge ability to get that message out there front and center. But as somebody reminded me during all of this fight sometime this year, that's also their full-time jobs.
Right.
So if everyone, whether it's myself or other teachers around, or even the superintendent, this is like we have other responsibilities that we're working on every day.
Yeah.
And yet, there you have whole entities whose whole full-time job is getting out there and making policy, right?
Who aren't even here and who, when they're done here, will go another place, not worry about what
Mhm.
happened in the wake of what they've done, but will go somewhere else to do the same thing.
Well, I mean, I am interested to see what happens. Like, if we get to a point where this entire agenda is fulfilled, there's at some point, like, there's gonna have to be a reckoning of like, did this actually work?
Sure.
And I mean, I would love to be able to look back and say it did.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay. Sure.
That's
Not, you don't want to be like I told you so. You want to be
no,
like, great.
no,
this helped everyone
absolutely. Oh
that
my
we wanted
God.
to help.
Like, if we got to the other side of this and the data showed that kids in this city really were thriving in a way that they weren't before, wow, how cool would that be?
Sure.
I would eat this microphone, right? Like, no, I'd be so
Totally.
excited. And yet, man, my big fear is that we look up in 10 years and we're just either in the same place we are now or worse.
All right, so if you're still here with us, you heard us talk a little bit about a report that was published in 2011. So that report was published by the Mind Trust, a pro-charter lobby that has existed for some time here. And the report included a number of ambitious recommendations for how to reshape the Indianapolis public school system. Again, the Mind Trust is a charter school lobby, and almost all of the ideas proposed, including essentially the dissolution of the IPS elected school board and the appointing of a mayoral appointed board, was included in this 2011 report. So the things that are going on right now and the things that we see ourselves fighting about, the things that are being listed in the final recommendations from the ILEA are not new. These are things that have been going on for a while, or things that people have been fighting to try and make happen for a while. Even before 2011, charter advocates and lobbyists had been pushing to destabilize IPS in order to kind of wrest some of that power for themselves. And to that end, friend and noted citizen journalist, community advocate, activist, whatever you want to call him, he is all of those things and more. Wildstyle Pichelle dropped an op-ed yesterday, 2 days ago, where he came in piping hot about the ILEA recommendations. I got it linked in the show notes, so y'all can tap in and read that for yourselves, because it is pretty extensive, because the man does his homework and does his research. But he talks about how this has been going on a lot longer than just even 2011, just 2016, just 2020. Like, these things, like the fight for and against Indianapolis public education and the Indianapolis public school system here, has been going on for a long time. And the really unfortunate piece of this is that despite them not attaining anything in 2011, they have slowly but surely chipped away at an admittedly struggling and not always correct IPS over the course of 2 decades, in order to set themselves up to be in a position where they can take away, or they can essentially remove, step over, bypass a democratically elected school board so that they can run schools as they see fit. And as Wildstyle says in the op-ed, when these things go into effect, if they were to go into effect, and as Tina said, we can't really historically we have a state legislature here that does not side with public school families and students. So just to get that out on the record very quickly and up front, like, we're already behind the 8 ball a little bit. But he even says in the op-ed, like, it's going to say and it's going to sound and it's going to look like IPS branding, but it's not IPS, because at the end of the day, we are not now, we the citizens and community members in these school districts, as well as the actual families and students that utilize these school services like transportation, facility, whatever the case is, we will no longer have a say in who is making the decisions and governing our school system. And while this is Indianapolis specifically right now, Indy is the testing ground for a wider state push for this type of model, as well as a more national push. I feel like there might be a part 5 to this, because I think there are some other things that need to be pulled together in order for us to get, like, again, the full scope of what's been happening. But that is kind of where we find ourselves right now. This conversation that I had with Tina is super informative, because she is as in it as you can possibly be. The op-ed from Wildstyle, necessary, because this is somebody who is doing the advocacy work, like research, that a lot of people don't do, especially in this day, 2026, that provides the kind of credibility needed where I can feel confident enough to say this is what's going on, because it's right here in the numbers, in the pages, in the paper. It's right here in their own words. And last but not least, something that we brought up in the conversation today, Tina talked about how when she and Ronak had come on the conversation piece, Ronak Shaw had talked about how the data from schools, public, IPS, or charter, is really messy right now. And so it's hard to even say what the appropriate measures are, because we're not spending enough time parsing through the data. And these are the people that are making these recommendations that are going to actually impact the way that school is governed going forward here in the city and potentially the state. And I bring that last point up just to reaffirm what I said about why Wildstyle's op-ed is a different but really important piece of this conversation, because he's done the legwork to parse through messy data to show us the real story that's happening, that is not the basis for what these charter lobbies like the Mind Trust are pushing for. Like I said, I got Wildstyle's op-ed linked here in the show notes. I would love for y'all to take a look, and then let me know what you think. I need to know what y'all think about this public education shit that we got going on. Are you paying attention to this? Do you have thoughts? Are you like, hell yeah, let's just do the charter stuff? If so, why? Are you an IPS parent? Are you an IPS student and you somehow listen to this show? I would love to hear your thoughts about everything that's going on, and I want to figure out a way to open this conversation up, because it's something we need to keep talking about this year. So stay on the lookout for that. But hit me up in the comments, hop in the chat, send me a DM. Let's figure it out. Let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this series, if you enjoy the show, would love for you to leave a like, a thumbs up, a heart, wherever you might be listening to this. It really helps the channel. And if you want to hear more or stay tapped in to the new stuff that we talk about every day, make sure you click that subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything that comes out. Tomorrow, you're going to hear the last bit of conversation that I have with Tina. We're going to be talking about, as these recommendations hit the Statehouse in 2026 this year. What's next? What do we need to do right now, and what happens next as we go forward? So until tomorrow, I've been Patrick Armstrong. This has been The Morning Show, and I'll see y'all soon.